I'd like to introduce Paul Mullen, the GM for Acute Care of GE Healthcare. Paul?
Thank you. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. And it's great to be with you. So here's what we're going to do. We need you to be a part of this conversation. As you can see, there's a fourth chair here. And what I'm really worried about is, since I know some of you in the audience, and I know some of you are going to just jump up here and join us, you should know that that's permitted in this conversation. So if you've got something you really think you want to add to the conversation, you can take the fourth chair as we go here. But I'm going to introduce, actually I'm going to have the panel introduce themselves. It's a really interesting group of people. I'm an AI practitioner in the sense that I lead a business that's trying to actually have an impact in a particular area. In this case, we're looking at the problem of sepsis and how we do a better job of predicting who's going to die without permission. And we really believe that everybody should ask permission on the way to their demise, and we want to be better aware of what's going on there. But our panel's also made up of people who are not only AI practitioners, they are also AI enablers, they are AI tool creators, and so forth. So our conversation this morning or this afternoon is really going to be about, does it still require the guys with the pointy hats and the stars and the moons in order to create a new algorithm for healthcare, or is it ready to be deployed into the common use of this? And so I'm going to turn it over to each of these guys. Now, I've asked them to have one question pre-prepared. I want you to think about this question also, because you'll have to participate in this, and that is that we did a pre-scanning. We used some AI software, I'm not exactly sure what it was, to actually look through all of the prospectuses, is that the little prospecti, something? Of all of the companies on the show floor. We now have a statistic to what fraction of the exhibitors on the show floor included the word artificial intelligence or AI in their prospectus. And so you can actually align yourself with the answers that they're going to give you. Just figure out who do you think got the best answer. We'll take a poll, and then we have ground truth available for you as well. So Prashant, start us off.
Hi everyone, I'm Prashant Shah. I direct the Health and Life Sciences for Artificial Intelligence at Intel Corporation. Outside of Intel, I'm also an AI advisor to National Institutes of Health, guiding the Precision Medicine Initiative. And my answer is 50%.
50%. So if you're with Prashant, you think half the people in this building...
50.
Include 50? Okay, so Prashant's number is 50. Okay. Carly.
Hey folks, my name is Carly Yoder. I'm the Director of Product Management for Artificial Intelligence at GE Healthcare. So my team works on the first mile, creating deep learning models, and then the last mile, delivering them into all the GE Healthcare products. And my answer is 66, which I still think might be less than the number that said population health 3 years ago. So
66, so if you think 66, now you can go an over-under on this. So Carly's got 66. Okay, Ujjwal.
I'm Ujjwal. I'm a principal AI and machine learning architect at Amazon AI. And I've been in healthcare for about 15 years, and I've seen this fraction kind of grow over the years at HIMSS. And my guess would be more optimistic. I would say 75%, so 3/4 of the people here would have some sort of an association to AI.
So we got 3/4, 66%, and 50%. I'll go low. Actually, I know the answer, so I can't go low. Who's with Prashant at the 50% level? All right, that's good. The Intel guys voted with you, so that's actually a good thing. Who's with Carly at 66? Very good. The Intel votes guys are voting twice. And who's with Ujjwal on the 75? The number's 33%. 33% of the people put it in their prospectus, and I think they have all come to visit me at our exhibit at some point, and I'm really trying to sort it out. So, guys, when I was a freshman engineer in 1983, is when I started in healthcare, the microprocessor was relatively new. There were really two of them. Motorola had their offering, the Motorola 6502 series, and then there was Intel with this budding thing called the 8080, which was going to take over the world. And so I was working on microprocessor controlled X-ray, and I think at home I had a microprocessor controlled toaster. Everything was microprocessor, and then after a while, it's just like, yeah, of course it has a microprocessor. Where are we in the AI world? Are we still in the space where AI is just at its beginnings? I'll tell you one other story. I was in Finland, and I was saying, AI for healthcare people is like sex for teenagers. They all know they want it, they just don't know what it is. And then somebody else in the room said, yeah, and since everybody else says they're doing it, I say I'm doing it too, right? Where are we in terms of the application of AI in a form that a computer scientist would recognize, but now in the practical world of implementation? Why don't you kick us off, Prashant, and see what you think?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of buzz around AI and there's a lot of hype around AI. And actually, I'll tell you a little story. My 11-year-old daughter, she's working on this particular project where she saw this particular video where she saw sort of emotion recognition in retail context, and she wanted to apply that context to healthcare. And she said, we have astronauts that are going to be taking long duration space flights, and that's going to take 2 years. Can we monitor the emotions of the astronauts on long duration space flights so that we can give them feedback before they're taking an important mission? So she took this retail model, and then so it was a pre-trained model, and then she put a quick prototype together. It took her about 4 to 5 weeks. She had a team actually.
This is your 11-year-old daughter that's doing this?
Yeah. So
I'm not worthy.
Can I hire her?
So the point is that there are a lot of models out there. You can quickly put a prototype together, and I think what's the limit is your sort of imagination to putting, understanding what the problems are and looking for adjacencies in other industries or even your own industry and creating a prototype. At the same time, I think it's also extremely difficult actually to put AI in practice, because to have a high quality model, to have a model that actually can work in the real world is a far different problem. It's a far tougher problem. So it's easy to create prototypes, it's easy to create POCs, it's hard to create real products. And that's where I think we are at this point.
So Carly, it sounds like a good story, theoretically. Is anybody, despite the marketing, has anybody done anything that's like practical, real, deployed, working, making money for caregivers? Is there anything real out there?
So yes, and I'll give a couple examples, but I fear when it comes to AI, we run the risk of what we did with the EMR, where we took a really painful paper process and turned it into a really painful digital process. And if we do the same thing with AI, where we take existing data and processes and add artificial intelligence to it, we'll move the needle. But what will really move the needle is when we take all the different data streams, pull them together, and add artificial intelligence on top of that. And no one's really started that yet, Paul. Now, we are doing smaller incremental advances. We're showing, we've done some work with Intel on bringing AI into medical devices. But if we set that as the target, as opposed to the target being bringing data together and doing this across genomic, EMR, imaging, et cetera, we've fallen short of what this technology can provide.
So, people who know me will know that I'm like the guy who will try just a little bit of everything. And what I have learned about Amazon's web services is it's like racquetball. Anybody can get in there and fire up a server, but it takes an expert to really play well.
That's a great analogy. And with great power comes great responsibilities, right? So we really want to, to your question, actually, about whether this thing has taken off. I want to take a step back, and I have a different perspective to this and say that, when it comes to AI and machine learning, right, the algorithms and the techniques and the statistical models that actually power the algorithms today have existed since the early 1900s. So as a concept in this field of research, this is not new. They have all been published. You can go back at dated papers from the early part of the century and still get very good statistical knowledge about the process. What has changed in the last 10 to 15 years is the capability to apply those theoretical concepts that have existed on paper to real data sets. And there are a couple of drivers for that, right? So the first thing that has driven that research is obviously the advent of more advanced computing techniques. So the advent of newer chips, the advent of newer technology to get that data orchestrated and run it at scale. And then of course the availability of data set has also improved, right? So there have been more and more collaboration at the regional as well as at the national level, which we have allowed researchers to actually apply those theoretical concepts into actual practice and publish those researchers for most of the applied AI work that we see today. So I definitely see a trend, and that's a really positive thing. And being at the cutting edge of that is definitely something we enjoy.
So let's involve our audience here. How many of you are actually AI researchers? Any AI researchers in the room? 1, 2, 3, great. Okay. Don't talk to them. What I'm interested to know is, you used the word researcher about 4 times in your statement. You've talked about the first mile and the last mile. And when do people like me, people like me, get to actually do this stuff without becoming a random forest or LTSM or LSTM or a deep learning guru? When do I get beyond the fancy words, and how do I get to the point where it's truly scalable in terms of the applications, where it's no longer special because I put it in my brochure, but it's assumed because it's part of what we do every day? I know, Carly, you're the first mile, last mile person. Can you kick off this question?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, we have to get to that point, because when you think about all the different anatomy, all the different things that can go wrong in the human body, you can't just limit building this AI to 1 company or 5 companies or 10 companies. We have to democratize the development of these models so that academic researchers and non-academic researchers all over the world can get involved. So we have to get there. I think, and I'll talk a little bit about—
Why aren't we there? What's holding us back?
So right now it takes, if not a PhD, at least a master's plus, to really be able to understand how to use the tools.
I graduated from high school as a homeschool, so is that good enough?
You're not qualified yet, Paul, but we'll work on that. So, and it's not even the tools on how to build the data science model itself. So anyone can download and access something like a SageMaker, TensorFlow, whatever it is, but getting the data prepared. So when I talk about the first mile, it's not just the data science. It's getting the data ready to go through the data science process. And there are not good tools to do that at scale yet. And what I mean by that is, how do you bring in data from all over the world? Because if you build a model just on people from California, it's going to work on just people from California. So how do you bring data from all over the world? How do you bring data that represents the diversity of populations and clinical conditions? So that's one problem to solve, right? And there aren't, leveraging SageMaker in the cloud, we're able to get closer, but not everyone accesses that. So that's a tool we need to democratize. The second one is, how do you do something to the data to make it valuable, right? So you do need a large amount of data to build deep learning models. But just a large amount of data won't build a good deep learning model. You have to teach that model what it needs to be able to discern in a healthcare setting. And that requires clinicians spending time with that data to annotate and curate and provide the ground truth that'll actually train the model. And this is really what we're working on at GE Healthcare with our Edison platform, is leveraging the work that the Amazon team has done in the cloud and with the SageMaker to build the data science tools, is layering healthcare specific services on top of that to do data aggregation and storage at scale, also traceability and lineage of where that data came from. The FDA cares about that if you're ever going to make a medical claim. And then the tools to curate and annotate that data so that when you get to the point of building a deep learning model, you're teaching it something that's clinically relevant.
So you got us to the FDA. So this paper, by the way, if you haven't seen this yet, it comes from Duke. I have no affiliation with Duke. I don't even like their basketball team. It's just another school for me in a way. But this is a paper, if you haven't seen it, I really recommend it. It's one of the best summaries of the state of AI today, and so I highly recommend it. It's called The Current State and Near-Term Priorities for AI-Enabled Diagnostic Support Software in Healthcare. And they talk about these 4 ways in which we might, as healthcare innovators, make our algorithms, or the way in which our AI-enabled bots work, make them trustworthy. So they've come up with these 4. So there's this model disclosure. We'll actually show you the way the model works. And that's actually quite similar to the way we do devices these days. We show you how it works and we show its outcome. Okay, that's one. Another one is, we won't just show you the model, but we'll actually give you the algorithm. Here is the algorithm, you can go explore it. The third one is interpretability. So it makes sense. Hey, that patient's at risk of deterioration. They're at risk of deterioration because their heart rate is up to 90, their respiration rate is 18, not terribly in trouble, but on the way, but I got their lactate back and the lab is on the way, that's why you should be worried. And then the last one is just, it's obviously and humanly comprehensible. So far, what I've heard from you folks is it's still the world of the stars and the moons and the fancy gradient descent algorithms. Help me, how am I going to get to this point?
Yeah, so I think, I think it starts even earlier. And, I've been at HIMSS for quite a few number of years, and HIMSS has evolved from sort of this interoperability and HL7 and being able to move data to more of the AI machine learning. And I think there's a trend over here, right? So there are barriers to actually creating good AI models, and Carly touched upon some of those where you don't have large enough data sets, you don't have diverse data sets. And interoperability is actually one of the key enablers of being able to exchange data from various regions to be able to pool these data sets together. Second step is obviously creating these models, and most of the neural network based techniques, you specify certain features, or sometimes you even let the neural network actually figure out the features themselves, and you train the model on these data sets. And in this case, there's a notion of this being a black box, that okay, the neural network will give you an answer, and whether you don't know exactly how it arrived upon that. So I think the third one that you have over here, interpretability, is more of model transparency. So healthcare requires model transparency to a large extent, especially in a very clinical use case. But I think the providers are asking for the last one, which is interpretability. Like, give me a statistical way to say that this particular model, give me the boundary conditions in which this particular model will work. When will it work? When will it not work? Why did it work? Why did it not work? How can I give that feedback back to the model developer to make it work? And I don't think we've come there just yet. I think this is still an active topic of discussion, but I don't think we've reached that particular last mile.
Carly, your microphone motion tells me you're going to have a different point of view.
So yes, and no, I agree, but I think a lot of times we focus just on the performance of the data science, and I actually know this isn't all you know because I've worked with you on this, but yes, the model has to perform at a level where you don't make mistakes, right? You have one first impression, and it has to work within the workflow in a way that doesn't disrupt what clinicians are already doing, right? And if you don't get both of those right, you either have a model that you lose trust in. Are there any folks who are familiar with the Mammo space and with CAD? Couple hands. So there was pre-deep learning kind of rules-based image processing created for mammography.
BI-RADS was be a common.
BI-RADS, yeah.
Right.
High volume, lots of screening, and so a lot of companies came out with CAD solutions, so computer-aided detection, to help the clinicians do mammography reviews faster. It didn't work well. The ceiling was too low. And so what many clinicians have told me is, yes, Carly, I used CAD, but that's because I got reimbursed higher. I actually ignored it and kept doing my read, but said that I did it, so I got the higher reimbursement, right? So yes, we have to have models that perform at a high enough level that we don't ignore them. But we also have to think about how you integrate it into the screens and products that clinicians already use, right? I'll give an example everyone can relate to. I've used this before, but Google Maps, right? We probably all use Google Maps to get from the other rooms in HIMSS to this room here. At least I had to.
Yeah.
It was very confusing. But what would you still use Google Maps if every time there was a traffic route change, you had to go to a new app, open up that app, look at the traffic route change and then go back to your original app? The answer is no. Every industry other than healthcare has done an excellent job of making AI invisible. You just know that the task you wanted to do anyway gets done faster and better. So when we talk about this trust, right, all four of these elements are related to trust for me. We have to, as an industry, think about, yes, high-performing, unbiased data science, but also how we deliver it, that last mile concept, which is where we've worked on optimizing deep learning models together using OpenVINO to run instead of 5 seconds in 1 second, right? Because then clinicians use it.
Let's throw this out to the audience here. As you think about trust in AI algorithms, what do you think it's going to take for people to say, yep, I'm willing to, set the regulatory thing aside for a moment. Just I, as a user of AI, as a recipient of this, what would it take for you to say, yep, I'm in on that one? Any point of view? Yeah, stand up and speak really loudly.
It's going to have to be right more often than humans are right.
It's going to have to be right more often than humans are right. What do you think, Ujjwal?
Yeah, so if I take this from the provider's angle or the consumer's angle, right? The consumers here are people who are saving lives, right? So for them, it's really important to have the level of confidence to know, basically, to answer the question of how exactly this thing is impacting, the patient population that I'm concerned about. Because without that reproducibility aspect, none of this gets applied in the context of a business problem. So I think there are two aspects to this, right? The first aspect is how easy it is to build a high accuracy model. I think we have done phenomenal work there. We have actually, proved with a lot of research or with like applied ML that it's really possible to actually create a very accurate image classifier for radiology images for certain problems, right? Now, what we haven't been really good at is to take that problem and actually explain it to the context of where it can be applied, where it cannot be applied, and then what are the boundaries for it. And that becomes really critical in the context of solving business problems by using machine learning, right? Otherwise, like, you can say that this is a really cool project and I can do it, and that's fantastic, but then unless and until it shows an impact on the ground, it won't work.
I'll give you a really interesting example. I'm an ultrasound guy, and the entire world is better when ultrasound is applied, just as a standard thing. So I don't care if you're an ophthalmologist, you should be using ultrasound. But it's very interesting. We were doing image classification, in this case, just kind of auto-labeling images in ultrasound. And what was interesting, we got to the kidney, and we could do really good auto-identification of the kidney. There is a kidney in this image. But what's interesting is when we look at the feature extractions that were happening, I expected as, a healthcare guy that I'd see a thing that's sort of shaped like a kidney bean, and maybe it has some vessels coming out of it, and maybe there's a ureter, and maybe you'd find some stones. I'd expect something like that. The actual features that were important were actually more related to the fact that it was adjacent to the spleen or adjacent to the liver. And if you had something kidney-shaped that was not adjacent to one of those organs, it was like, well, that can't be a kidney. It's got to be something else. Yeah, I can imagine a bunch of weird cases in which you'd have a kidney in isolation. But the fact that it had to be next to it was just an odd result. And I looked at it, and now I'm comfortable with it, but that was not intuitive. Prashant, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that's, so the overall context of AI and how the AI is being applied in the context of the overall use case is actually very, very important, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted to go back to the gentleman's point about it needing to be sort of better than humans. And that is true, and we've shown quite a lot in research world that we can train AI models to be somewhat better than humans.
Yeah.
But most of those studies are on retrospective studies. This is data that has been collected in previous years. None of these studies are actually prospective studies. And I'm actually very curious to know how AI actually lends itself in the real world when it's encountering data that it has never seen before, and how does that feedback loop happen back to it? And there's one more point that there's this big company over here in HIMSS, and I won't name names, but they had a clinical decision support system that that actually prescribe the wrong drug for a cancer treatment.
Yeah.
And when a physician makes a mistake, they might kill one patient or two patients. When a clinical decision support system makes a mistake, and that is widely out there in the field, you're talking about hundreds, if not thousands, of lives that can be impacted by this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So getting trust, getting these algorithms to a point where it's clearly explained the boundary conditions at which it's going to fail, I think it's very, very critical. And getting that real world feedback back into the algorithms developer is going to be very, very critical.
So I'm going to push a little bit. I love the answer of AI must be better than humans, but the follow-up question would be which humans, right? Does it need to be better than a third-year resident? Does it need to be better than a 10-year attending? Does it need to be better than the most advanced person in any clinical area? And depending on who you talk to, no one says the resident, but they fall in different spectrums of expertise until they'll be willing to adopt it. And I think that's a question worth grappling with, right? Because for most of the world, we don't need it to be better than the leading clinician everywhere on being able to detect a lesion or the size of a lesion. So I think the better than humans is good, but we got to nuance that more and figure out as a healthcare industry, as healthcare providers, as patients, what level is good enough for us to be willing to accept. And then Paul, your example was great. I'll give another one around how diversity of data matters a lot and context when you're building these models. So we were training a model in the X-ray space on a collapsed lung, and it was getting very, very good on data from a certain region. We brought in data from India, actually, and all of a sudden the model started performing terribly. And we were shocked, and we went and reviewed the results and saw what was lighting up. And in India, when you take an X-ray, you position your arm like this, and the empty space between the arm and the chest cavity was lighting up the algorithm. And so it underscores the essential responsibility you have as an AI or data science builder in the healthcare space to diversify your data if you're ever going to make a claim that extends beyond the folks you did the initial training on.
I think it's terrific. I'm sitting here trying to do PowerPoint as we talk because there's a model that I wanted to put in front of you. I'm going to distract you for a moment with a different question while I finish making this table, and then we'll come back to it. There's two things you should never do. Watch somebody do PowerPoint in public and actually do PowerPoint in public, but I'm going to try it here. But I want to put this question in front of you. This is something I say to my team all the time, because the question here had to be, was trustworthy? My question is, what is better than what we have? And here's what I've been arguing. Either you have to have better statistics, better positive predictive value, negative predictive value, likelihood ratio, area under the curve. You pick your favorite thing, precision recall curve. Or have the exact same statistics that you have now, but do it earlier, because as a caregiver, I don't want to know that I'm already in trouble. I want to know that trouble is coming. Or, to get your point, Carly, same statistics perhaps, same time frame perhaps, but now it works anywhere. It works in the PACU, it works in the ED, it works on the floor, it works in India, and it works in New Hampshire. Any ideas about, well, I would love to hear from these folks, so just think about this for a moment. Where do you think the greatest value is? But I'd like you guys to think about, from an ML and AI perspective, is there anything inherent in the way in which those tools work that might get us to one of these earlier than the others?
So I can start. Basically, like, one of the things that we've seen people really get excited by is when it comes to model accuracy, right? So when you're talking about model accuracy and trying to see that, okay, you're getting really good results, first of all, you have to translate that accuracy metric in the context of what problem you're trying to solve. So let's say there is a really cutting edge research out there that gives you 0.1% better accuracy from the previous research. That might be like using a technology that's never been used before. But in context of an actual application to a business problem, is that 0.1% accuracy going to get you to a better patient population, or better result with the kind of problems you're trying to solve, is the question I think everyone should be asking. So in terms of translating whatever is available in terms of cutting edge research into applying it to actual problems in healthcare, the gap is not in terms of getting to human accuracy level or surpassing it. I think that can be simulated in research or targeted environments. But the problem becomes much more difficult when it has to generalize across a population. And that population level generalization is a very different problem than actually getting higher accuracy levels up. So, that's I think the next 10 years is going to see, where more and more companies try and invest in this idea of taking research and then applying it into the context of healthcare and life sciences to solve problems with high accuracy.
What do you guys think? If you had a choice of better statistics, same statistics earlier, or one of those but anywhere, which one would you pick first? How many would go with just better statistics, generally speaking? Okay, nobody going for better statistics. I'm really glad to see that, because I think it's hard. How about same statistics but earlier? Wow, that's really interesting. How about same statistics, same time frame, but now make it work anywhere? Wow, the earlier really has it here in this group. I'm really heartened to hear that. That's actually good news for me in the end. What do you, from a tools perspective, what do you think? Are time series data easier to work with, harder to work with? Where are we in the maturity of that world?
So I think in terms of getting answers quicker and easier, I think we are there. We are having tools and technologies in existence today. Think about the era where people had to write 5 pages of SQL to get to an answer of maybe an aggregated metric, right, from a data warehouse. Today you can do it by a click of a button or manage tools that allow you to do that. I think we are in the similar era of ML too, where instead of writing 5-page of custom algorithms, we have managed ways of getting to answers quicker. But the question we should be actually asking ourselves is that useful? I mean, when it comes to healthcare and life sciences, right? Reproducibility is the essence of it, right? Being open, not directing.
But I tell you what, if you tell me I've got 2 hours to treat this patient, it's extremely different than if you tell me that patient's already declining. So time matters here, right?
It does. But then the question you should be asking is, do you run the risk of actually getting to the answers quicker, and then run the risk of getting to the wrong answers rather than actually getting to the answers quicker? So that's the evaluation I think we'll have to do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised to see those answers. It's pretty much what I hear from every clinician too. And I think there is a long-term, short-term, because essentially if you think through the 3 things that Paul showed, the top one is clinical difference, right? The middle one's operational, and the bottom one's a little bit about access, right? So that middle one of operational has a 2-fold impact though. So one, the one we're talking about now is about, hey, if you can identify a stroke, time is life, right? If you can identify a critical finding in the ED instead of 8 hours later when a clinician would normally look at it, you're saving a life. And that matters, right? On the other hand, throughput also matters. When we're in a extremely cost driven healthcare setting, or hospitals operating at 2-3% margin when they're lucky, think about the difference if you can take a 45-minute MR exam and make it 20 minutes. Think about if you're doing a sonography exam on someone 7 months pregnant, the baby's moving, this usually takes an hour and a half, you can do that in 55 minutes, right? These type of operational changes, I think, are not only extremely powerful, but are also where AI will happen first in healthcare. We're beginning to see it already.
All right, you guys, by the way, I'm about to give them a question they have not seen.
Okay.
Right? And that's the risk you run when you ask me to moderate something like this. So, and I've also now done the very first time I've ever moderated and done PowerPoint at the same time.
So Carly had warned me about this morning.
What's that?
Carly had warned me about this.
Yeah, so this is a thought experiment I asked my team to do. By the way, I don't think anybody will ever sign a contract that looks like this, but it was a very interesting thought experiment. I said, what if our team could make an algorithm, we think it's a good one, it does it early, it does it on time, it's got good quality, And every time, so this is your usual confusion matrix, right? Truth on the top, prediction on the left. And every time we get it right, that patient is going to be very, very unwell. You should start to treat them, and we actually get the prediction right. You pay us $3,000. Every time we waste your energy with a false positive, we'll pay you $1,000 for having to run around and get your rapid response team to jump in and the medications you use and those kinds of things. By the way, every time we get it wrong and there's somebody sick we missed, we'll pay you for that too. And by the way, I'm not putting values on here. $3,000 and $1,000 are just numbers I just made up while we were sitting here. I don't know what to do with true negatives. Just ignore those for the moment. And then I asked my team to say, if the caregivers organization is going to be profitable under this model, and if my company is going to be profitable on this model, how good do the statistics of the algorithm have to be? You see where I'm going? So you start with, if I'm going to pay them every time I'm wrong, and they're going to pay me every time I'm right, that helps me to understand how good that model has to be in the first place. Now, you can argue with a 3,000, 1,000. What do you guys think? Should we start to think in terms of giving ourselves financial and scores? I don't want to make it just financial, because in the end, nobody will sign a contract that looks like this, including me. But would this help to inform what good looks like for an algorithm?
I think value-based care is getting there, right? When you the paradigm change that is slowly happening in our industry of sort of accountable care organizations and value-based care, I think these kind of problems that you've very nicely articulated over here in a very simple way is somewhat taking shape, because every time somebody has to actually, somebody goes home with a risk of readmission and has to pay a penalty, there is this kind of incentive structure that is slowly creeping into our system, which is a good thing, I think. So the accuracy of the models, I think, obviously have to be tied to actual outcomes, not the statistics that we have on retrospective data.
Yeah. What do you guys think?
So I think it's an interesting model to start with. I mean, monetizing people on right predictions. I think one of the problems you will run into over here is with the experiment itself. Like, how long do you wait to get to an actual data point versus a prediction?
It's just a thought experiment. Right?
Thought experiment.
So I can do
as
this
a thought
quickly.
experiment, I think it's interesting. What would be really important though is to make sure that you actually come to a realization that this model scales to the level of a population or not. Because how many people get treated by this and get a true prediction out of it would really drive your revenue, right? So getting into discussions around, okay, who is the population this is applied to? What kind of throughput are you expecting on your inferences would actually drive such a thing. So
Jump in, Carly.
Yeah, for me, this is a chart all about picking the right use case to go after.
Yeah.
Right? So for you, Paul,
Yeah.
this is only going to work for you if at the end of the day or the period, you take in more than you pay back.
Yeah.
Right? But it only works for the hospital system or the provider if the amount that they save is more than what they ended up paying you.
Interesting.
And so you have to land at the right problem
Yeah.
for this to be valuable. And I think that is one of the things about AI that we sometimes miss, is it's like a hammer looking for a nail, as opposed to stepping back and saying, no, what is the nail, to overuse the metaphor, that would most make a value prop like this valuable?
Yeah.
Let's go solve that problem.
But just a question, how many of you either are a product manager or manage product managers? All right, so I'll tell you what my experience was with this. So you have to know, on my team, we do occasionally have linear thought, but it's an extremely chaotic team, and it creates a lot of very interesting learning. And so I posed this question, not with those numbers, and to a particular problem. In this case, we were predicting 4-hour onset of essentially a response to sepsis. So it was either escalation of the rapid response team, escalation to the ICU, or mortality. And so I said to them, pretend we had a contract that looked like this. How good would the algorithm have to be? And for the first time ever, the product manager on our team who was responsible for this was able to give me the statistics they needed so they could give it to the Scrum team that was working on the algorithm. Because most of the rest of the time, what we said to the Scrum team was, it's got to be really good. No, that's not good enough, make it better. And they would say, I need more data. And I'd say, okay, well, and we could never really land the plane in terms of what does it take to make an algorithm that would be useful to a caregiver and useful to the organization that we're building. And this idea of making it sort of this thought experiment really landed the plane for us in a big way.
Yeah, so one thing I actually want to add to this is, so machine learning and AI is actually a probabilistic method, right? And what you're trying to fit that into is a deterministic method. So where you're trying to say that, okay, I want to determine by how long will it take to get to a level where the model is actually giving me very correct answer, however way you define correct, right? Whereas machine learning works on the premise that if you give me a hypothesis and you train me enough, I will be able to answer that hypothesis with probably so much of accuracy. So it's a very different way of looking at the problem, and then, I'm not surprised that you were not able to get to that statistical answer very quickly, because, what you're trying to do over here is like, use the probabilistic method to get to deterministic answers, which is very difficult to do as a problem definition.
I was just trying to get my product managers to give me a straight answer, right? And it's like, how good does it have to be before I can take it to market? And by the way, if you pick a different set of numbers, you'll get a different answer. So a little bit, you have some wisdom in that. Can I change subjects on you? By the way, any insights from you folks on this? Would you disagree? Any of you still out there? You can raise your hand. Yeah, we're still there. Okay, can I change subjects on you? I want to go back to the question of what is good look like? And this is another really interesting paper. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It's a paper published by Matt Komorowski and a group in Nature. And I remember being in a conference. We have a journal club that meets every other week in my team. But I remember being in a conference. This paper had come up. I mentioned it to somebody else, and this very distinguished French gentleman said something in a very nice. I won't try to imitate him. It was hilariously profane. And I said, well, what's wrong? And he said, the biggest problem with this paper is that I didn't write it. And so let me just tell you what this paper is about. It was retrospective data. They were looking at the MIMIC database, and they had developed a predictor about what's the best way to treat patients who have been identified as either septic or likely to be septic, right? And then what they did is they found an optimal point in terms of the administration of fluids and the administration of vasopressors. And then what they did is they went and they looked at the mortality rates for people as they moved away from the optimal point for any individual patient. And you can see the statistics up on the page there. D&E looks like, by the way, it really reinforces the debate about whether we're over-hydrating patients. By the way, for those of you who are not like sepsis weenies, let me just tell you quickly what's going on here. You've got a patient who's got an infection. The normal sort of competition system that's in your body to both raise your inflammation high enough that you'll start to respond to it and have anti-inflammatories that are naturally occurring so it doesn't get out of control. That gets out of control. And so now the question is, what happens is that as it goes out of control, your blood pressure drops dramatically, and what they're thinking is, I got to get this blood pressure back in control. I've got to get the infection under control. I got to get this person out of danger. And what happens is that we, generally speaking, medicine has said, let's get their blood pressure under control, and we do this with something called early goal-directed therapy. And what we want to do then is we start to say, okay, their swimming pool just got really big. I had the same amount of water. The water level went down. So now I got to replace all that water. And, Prashant looks like a reasonable guy with about 4 liters of blood in him. So we're going to give him 8 liters of fluid in the process of resuscitating him, right? And he comes out looking like the Michelin Man. That's what we do to patients as we resuscitate them in sepsis. And here they said, hey, listen, if you just would have followed what the bot told you you would have done, you would have had a mortality rate around 0.1. Instead, you had a bunch of patients out there, you gave them as much as, in this case, only 2 times what the recommended dose was, and your mortality rate goes up by a factor of 8. So it's real stuff, right? Is this enough to convince us that we ought to be doing this? And that, by the way, this is a really well-respected group. I haven't looked at what the, what do you call the rating when papers are referenced by other papers. I haven't looked at it, but really well-respected. Is this kind of data, is this good enough?
So Mimic is actually a very good database. We have done a lot of research on Mimic ourselves. In fact, one of the things that we actually did with Mimic was to take clinical notes from ICU patients and actually predict the risk of mortality through models that actually did time series analysis on observations that were recorded over a 24-hour period, and we got to, like, in terms of like accuracy, we got up more than 20% better accuracy by just taking unstructured information. And that prompted us to actually launch a service of our own called Comprehend Medical, which is basically unstructured text analysis. But coming back to the topic, I think this is really good and very promising in terms of research, right? It's really good that you're able to get such results and get such deterministic results from Mimic data sets and how they have actually created the case and control group here. But what's really important is how realistic is this in practical scenarios? Like, are you looking for similarities, or first, like, is your data set first going to be transformed into this fashion to actually get such results, or is this way off from what actually happens in hospitals? So those are kind of questions I think we need to ask ourselves.
So what I really like about this particular study is they actually took the effort to actually put it in real use and compare the use versus what the model had. So I think this is the kind of stuff I feel like we need to do more as an industry, not just look at, build models based on retrospective data, but then this is actually putting the effort to actually validate and show with real evidence that you are making a difference in the outcomes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, this should be good enough to your question, but I mean, how many of us have been told by our doctors to exercise more, eat more grains, and drink less alcohol, right? Like, just because we know things work doesn't mean we're very good at using them in practice. So for me, like, I love this. I want to see us do more and more quantifying the impact of these type of AI-assisted or even rules-based assisted decision points. But if you ignore the patient experience, if you ignore the provider experience, it's going to be like our primary care doctors telling us to eat right and exercise well.
All right, I'm going to give you one more tough one, then I've got a softball for you at the end, and we'll end there. So, also out of this Duke paper, I really like this phrase. It says, just as clinicians know that a particular drug does not always work, they will need to understand that AI-enabled software will not be perfect or equally dependable in every instance. So I know that I can give this drug to this kind of patient, but I cannot give the same drug and expect the same result from all patients, right? How do we think about indications for use? And what do we think are what's the evidence we're going to need to provide in order to start they're basically thinking about here is AI as a drug, right? How do we think about this?
So my perspective is that there needs to be full traceability of how this particular model was trained, what kind of data sets, what was the population demographic, ethnicity, all of that traceability needs to be baked into the accepted use of this particular model. Where has it been tested? How accurate has it been in terms of your real-world testing? And I think that's going to be key. I think this is a very salient point because an AI model that may have been trained on patients from Framingham, Massachusetts may not work for patients in India. So accepted term for use is, I think, that goes back into the AI sort of explainability of AI models as well. Like in which conditions is it going to fail, which conditions is it going to work, and why did it fail and why did it work? Being able to answer those
We'll go out of
questions.
order, Ujjwal. Why don't you give us your point of view, and
Sure.
Carla, you'll get almost the last word.
So, I think, in terms of like machine learning in general, like when you think about how it applies to drugs, right? And drugs being, like, let's take an example, right? That will be making the answer more intuitive. So let's see all the things that we've been doing in the space of precision medicine, right? Where we have been taking certain molecules and certain aspects of human DNA, and then trying and see how those molecules affect the outcome at the DNA level. Now, what we are actually doing there is going very deep and one very specific thing, right? And getting very good results with it. Versus actually treating this at a generic level and getting low level accuracies or low level results in it. So the same thing applies in the context of machine learning as well. You can go really deep on one area and get very high accuracy and say that my model works really, really well to recognize this kind of pictures or this kind of images for this problem specifically and get good results with it. Or you can say, well, I can get there 30% of the way with a lot of images, right? So that's a balance. I think in context of healthcare, it's better to go deep because you're saving lives. But at the same time, technologies exist today, and the field of research is really flourishing with ideas that could make the problem definition, problem, and exchanging of models in various contexts more and more easy. So I'm really optimistic.
All right, Carly.
So first of all, those 33% of companies here that are saying they use AI, I doubt any of their slogans are, our AI-enabled software will not be perfect. So I think this is a very good reminder of where the reality clashes with the hype, right? And I think as vendors and as practitioners bringing this into the places where we interact with patients, we need to remember expectation setting, and when we go and make claims to regulatory bodies or to customers that we're interacting with, the definition of what we do well, maybe not perfect, but well, needs to be defined so that we're setting people up not to be disappointed.
Great. I'm going to give you a softball to end with, but I want you to think about it while I have a public service announcement to make. The softball will be, what interesting thing did you see for the first time at this meeting that you think will be the big theme when the three of you are invited back to a panel next year? So think about that. Meanwhile, the marketing people have suggested that I don't know where you raise your hand in the back, but there are these things, I had never heard of one of these before, but it's called a V-book. And I think it means that you don't actually have to read it yourself. You open it up and it reads it to you. I think I knew we had these for children. I did not realize they had it for us, and I think I'm excited to do it. So if you find your way into the back, I think if you ask nicely, somebody will give you a V-book, which is an introduction to the kinds of things that some companies are doing around the enabling of artificial intelligence work in healthcare for others and trying to make it as a provider to others. Okay, the big thing you saw this year that was an aha moment, and you said, wow, I think that'll be a big thing next year.
So there are many things, but I think what stands out to me is the various architectures in which context AI is being deployed. So there's edge, there's sort of in the devices, there's edge, there's data center, there's cloud, and I think AI, a lot of people ask this question like, is the AI going to be at the edge, or is it going to be in the cloud, or is it going to be somewhere in between? And I think the realization or the reinforcement of my premise that it's going to be everywhere is going to be is what I'm seeing more and more sort of
cloud,
evidence.
fog, edge, on the
Everything. I
ground.
think
That'll be
everything.
next year's big topic. Okay, Carly.
It's easy for me. Everything genomics. I mean, my little sister actually has a PhD in bioinformatics, and that's as much as I know about what she does. But what I saw walking around was not next year.
Genomics.
Not next year. I don't think it's still going to be the thing that's really changed. But 5 years from now, oh man, the possibilities there get me really excited.
All right, and?
I think the fact that, we've seen more openness at HIMSS this year, not only from the providers, but, we hosted a pharma forum over here, which was unheard of at a conference like HIMSS, right? So the fact that pharma companies are now reaching out to providers and vice versa to share data and collaborate at the data level, which could actually say drug discovery in context of clinical outcomes, and then stretching that into genomics, right? To going from genomic data sets into drug discovery that leads to clinical outcomes is where the world should be heading, right? Because AI can really correlate these aspects really well. So I'm really surprised by this openness, honestly, in a good way. And I want this to continue in the next year. And the next time I come here as a panel, I want to talk about use cases which tell me these variants in my genetic traits leads to diabetes.
Well, listen,
that's the dream I have.
I have to tell you the story. I was in a hotel, and you've been in these places where there's, the executive lounge or something. You get to have breakfast, and there's somebody in there providing the food and cleaning it up. And I was so impressed with this woman, and I asked her, why are you so good at this? Because she was, her technical job was put out the food and clean up the tables. But she did, and she said this. She said, Paul, well, she didn't know my name, but let's say she didn't know. She said, here's what I have learned. Happy people do better work. My job is to make sure that they leave this hotel happier because they're going to make the world better. I said, there's a person who really understands their job, and I think about the work that each of you are doing and the companies you work for. You're going to influence the way this conversation evolves. Do good work for us, because it's going to have an impact on not only the companies you represent, but on the way in which we treat patients going forward. So thanks for your time. I really appreciate it. We'll talk to you next year.
Thank you.